I'm Katina.
And I'm Pia.
We're here from Newport Beach Trauma Therapy. And today we're going to talk a little bit about boundaries. What is a boundary? We all have them, but I don't know that we all spend much time thinking about them with intention or having an awareness of boundaries.
Right. That's so true. I think boundaries, we understand the word, but not necessarily how to use them, not only to protect ourselves, but those around us. So
Yes.
I love to use the analogy that boundaries are like fences. Fences make for good neighbors, and boundaries make for great self-respect and respect of others.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds fantastic. In your work with clients, what are some issues that you've seen come up with regard to boundaries?
You know, that's really a great question, Katina. What I found is that a lot of women that I work with, they understand the word boundaries and they have intention to use and the boundaries, apply them. But then in certain situations, they allow the brain to tell them or rationalize why they shouldn't, because they're worried about somebody else's feelings. They think that if they implement boundaries, it's going to hurt somebody else's feelings, or they're going to come across as being too aggressive, or as we know the word, they're going to come across as being a bitch. And nobody wants to have that happen.
Absolutely, you're right. You bring up such an amazing point. I think that we all have an instinct, right? We all have, our body is an antenna. We feel things in our bodies sometimes, often before we recognize them in our minds. And I mean, I agree with you. What you're describing is the way that sometimes people, they have an awareness of a boundary. They have an awareness that a boundary is being pushed.
Yes.
But due to cultural messages, dominant social discourse, pressure, peer pressure,
Right.
all kinds of things.
Exactly.
These things get in the way, and then we turn away from instinct, or we try to shut it down, right?
Right. I think it's also important to know that our body knows when we are not implementing our own boundaries. And what happens is we'll start to feel something, it's a discomfort. We can't really put a name to it, but maybe it's something going on with our stomach, pressure in the chest. It could even be this lump in the throat, possible headache. There's so many things that the body tells us, but because we're not aware of listening to our body, we allow the frontal lobe, which is where the logic comes in, the rationale comes in, and the brain is always telling us, it's okay. Just go ahead and go with the flow. Don't make any trouble. Just all these messages that we receive, and we don't pay attention to what's going on in the body. And unfortunately, when we allow the frontal lobe to justify what we're supposed to be doing versus listening to what's happening in here, that's when we run into issues.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with you. Now, in my practice, I use a lot of EMDR, and with EMDR, we do practices around tuning into your body, noticing where things land, because EMDR acknowledges that trauma is stored in your body. I'm wondering, with the way that you practice, what are some of the things that you like to use with clients?
Well, it's important for me to have the client think about where in their body they're feeling it, because that's kind of the area that you want to focus on when you are approached with certain things that challenge your boundaries or implementing your boundaries. And so it depends. And what I find is the majority of the clients are feeling it either in their chest or in their stomach.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So those are the areas that we want to sit with those feelings to really understand how it's part of us, and it's not something that we separate. It is, we're all about incorporating mind, body, and soul, and understanding what we're feeling at the time is so important. And in the practice, we want people to become more aware of what's going on, because this is going to help us, right, understand how we can implement boundaries. And boundaries doesn't mean that we have to be aggressive, that we have to be combative. Just there are ways to express our boundaries in a very loving way. I always love to ask clients, what is your relationship with boundaries? Because understanding that relationship and your perception of that relationship is going to help us help you.
That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. And one of the things that I've noticed with clients too, in addition to, you're right, the chest and the stomach are places that frequently trauma gets stored, feelings land. I've also noticed a lot of constriction in the throat, especially when a person feels that their voice has been taken, which is kind of a fascinating, at the same time as it is unfortunate sort of manifestation of trauma.
Right.
The good news is that with good therapy, with good therapists, there's a lot of space for hope, and there's a lot that we can do to help. And one of the ways that I like to work with clients with regard to, just tuning into the body is to start out with a body scan, right? Just a little bit of some guided meditation, some relaxation techniques, scanning the body, noticing any places that there are any tightness or any pain or any unusual sensations at all. And then tuning into that, right?
Yes.
And then maybe breathing into it or just getting curious about it. But actually, circling back to our discussion about boundaries, this brings up the topic of sometimes people don't feel safe enough in their bodies to tune into them.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. That's right. And we have to address that as well. We have to explore, why is it that a client isn't feeling safe within their own body. So, again, there's so many wonderful tools that we can utilize in our therapeutic sessions to help our clients understand and implement and develop healthier relationships with some of these tools that we can use to keep us safe, and others as well, right? It helps us to respect ourselves, to build our self-esteem, because we're listening to what innately we know we need to do.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I think that in some ways it comes down to a matter of, as you say, boundaries can be implemented lovingly. Boundaries are about, essentially, I love your metaphor of the fence.
Yes.
Right? Boundaries are also about being able to own your no.
Yes.
Right? They're being able to understand that you have the right to say no. If you're in a space where you don't feel comfortable, you have the right to feel comfortable.